For most of my fishing, I like it to be quite visual. I'm using my time pretty wisely, and it gives me a good idea of what's going on when I'm using my eyes instead of fishing out in the pond. When you're observing the fish like that, you can't beat it, I don't think. You know exactly what's going on, and a good way to target them is free lining. You can place a bait in front of the certain target fish you'd like to catch, and it gives you a good opportunity and chance to catch the one you're after. As of recently, I've been fishing some left alone natural venues where the carp are very unpressured and just act like normal carp should. Bread's great and it works really well, especially on them park lakes and stuff like that where they see it day to day. That becomes a natural food. But on these type of venues I've been fishing recently, it's been quite tricky to catch them on that. They almost associate the bread with something not being normal, and can scare them sometimes. And I sort of lent to the natural path and going down the route of using natural baits, and I've started to use worms a lot more in the fishing recently that I've been doing. And it's quite strange. You could be free lining a worm and it could be resting on the bottom for a couple of minutes, and a carp will come along if you've moved that worm and start feeding where that worm's been sat, where the amino acids and natural juices have sort of leaked off into the lake bed. And the results have just totally outshone bread in this situation on these venues. Worms are obviously a classic bait, and they certainly shouldn't be overlooked. Some days I will go to the lake and I'll be casting free line worms in front of carp, hoping that they'll take them and be inquisitive and take them on the drop. Other times, like normal stalking, you know, I'll go around, I'll bait a few spots in the edge with stuff like pellet just to get them grubbing around, and I will then go on to use the free line worm tactic to see what's there and maybe select a carp out of that group by using that method. Could be on the bottom with a little bit of shot, or letting it fall through the water and trying to get that reaction where one will just charge up to it and suck it in. So yeah, I sort of use both methods in my own fishing, but it all depends on the time and the day. There's a nice fish to the left. There's a nice one coming in as well. He's got to eat it, surely. Yep. One of the better ones, that, although a lot of them are small. He was actually a bigger fish. These wild ones, they do put up a decent little fight. Keeps trying to get over towards that tree. There we go. Lovely. Really satisfying. And that's a result. Well, after getting this one mooching on a bit of pellet, the free line worm tactic did pay off, and I managed to single him out from the group of fish that was down there. He isn't the biggest, but he was the biggest in the group. And using that tactic of selecting the carp that you'd like to catch on the day works everywhere, and I do apply it to a lot of my own fishing when I'm targeting a certain carp. Instead of sort of sitting there and chucking rods out and waiting for something to come along, a lot of these natural venues that I'm fishing, I have no idea of really the stocks or what lives in there. So this method of stalking and visual angling, I get to not only have an exciting method of fishing, but I also get to learn what lives in the lake. Many a times I'll be watching fish in the edge on a new venue that I don't know nothing about or heard much about, and a big carp will come swimming in, and you can't beat that buzz. Other venues as well, I've sort of been to natural wild venues, and there's nothing big in there, but they're lovely carp. So yeah, it's exciting, and as well as learning, you get to also see what's in there, and you can't beat that. Unlike your other natural baits like maggots and casters, they can go rancid really quickly if not kept in the right conditions. You all right?
Alf?
Could I just get a quarter of lobworms, please? Worms, they keep really well. If you sort of keep them in a nice cool environment and keep checking on them, they're fine for a couple of months, you know. Bread as well, that can go stale really fast. So when you're actually buying a pot of worms, if you don't use them in your session, then they're not going to go off as long as you look after them. You've got plenty of time to use them, and that's another benefit. I'm sure that if I said I didn't like fishing for big carp, I'd be lying. And sometimes catching lovely, pretty old carp and rarely caught carp is very exciting, and it is really nice. But when you stumble across something big, also that's unknown and special, it really is a buzz. I found a venue that was another natural venue, and this time there was a good one to be caught. A small headed carp, there wasn't many in there, and the lake was a fair size, but it really suited to the approach of fishing with natural baits and the free lining worms. I knew that I'd have a good opportunity catching my target this way. It's very hard being a natural venue. This venue is hard to access the water. There's a lot of snags and lots of bits and bobs that you can't really get to the water's edge. So baiting little spots in the edge and watching the same sort of carp visiting became really regular, until one day I sort of seen them grouped up in a corner and managed to get a little spot going in the edge. I didn't fish it straight away. I just kept baiting and watching, and there was a nice mirror that regularly kept visiting the spot, probably about 30 pound I would say, and yeah, he seemed to be one of the biggest. And then one day a mirror, the exact same shape and proportions to him, come in, but this time he was nearly about 10 pound heavier. So I went back to the car. I didn't spare no time to go and get a rod, and I got in position, managed to get in my swim, get a worm rigged up with a little shot and get the bait in the edge. He drifted out and I waited for him to come back in, and I managed to get that chance. There was no hesitation with that natural worm, and he took it. Unfortunately, within a couple of seconds, the hook pulled. He literally come to the surface, shook his head, and the hook come out. And he sort of sat there for a minute and then sort of sunk back down and swam off. It was almost as if he wasn't totally spooked, and at the time I was kicking myself, but I couldn't be disheartened, you know. All the other fish were still there feeding, and I then put a little bit of bait in, and I went home. I went back the next day and baited again, a little bit of pellet, a little bit of casters as well. And I continued this for about 3 days, and on the third day, I think it was, after losing him, I went to bait and threw a few handfuls, and then 4 carp come swimming in, and he was leading the pack. And he dropped down straight away and started feeding, and I couldn't believe it. I actually took a little video on my phone that he was back again feeding so quick. And I knew with the confidence of the way he was feeding that I'd definitely get another chance. So I went hard and started to fish for him most days that I had free. And one day I returned and he was there feeding, and he was feeding really hard. I knew that the opportunity was going to be that day, and he come in a couple of times, come very close to feeding near the worm, and would turn away. There'd be other fish feeding, and I kept pausing and lifting the bait in and out until I got that opportunity. And it's easier said than done, but when you've got a lot of big carp and they're feeding, the water clarity gets pretty murky fast. So to sort of see that fish take that bait, sometimes it takes a lot of patience and time to watch it and single it out. But on this occasion he come back in and he was feeding, and I managed to get the worm in position just in his path, and he actually took it. The water, the clarity was a little bit murky, but I didn't exactly see him take it. But the line tightened up as he moved off, and I struck into him. That's a big girl. That's a big girl. She's got to be near 40 pounds. I managed to jump down and net him in all the nettles, got stung to bits, and he went in the net pretty quickly, which was obviously a result. So I caught him at about 8 o'clock, and by the time my friend got to me, it was getting dark and all a bit of a rush. But I managed to get a couple of minutes of footage of him and some nice photos and get him back. Well, finally, after a good few days of hard angling, I've managed to catch this big mirror. Proper fatty, and I could probably bet you that it's never been caught. But yeah, she's had a little bit of a stressful time being lost by me about 3 days ago, so I'm gonna get her back, and hopefully, yeah, she lives on forever and might make someone else happy one day. But yeah, absolutely chuffed. Sweet brother. I've caught a lot of carp recently on the worms, mainly small ones. So when that big one did come along, I do think that I did deserve him. And there's still a few more to go back for, so let's hope that I catch them soon.